Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we do something a little different. It's our once-a-year venture into the world of fantasy football. We're going to look at the Lions' top players, not only discuss where each one ranks in their position category, but also talk about where you should consider drafting them and how they compare to top players in each category as well. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jahmyr Gibbs, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Like in previous years, we're bringing in some help for this episode. I will fully admit I am not fully the expert I once was in this field, so joining me today are three guys who are actively involved in the game and arguably at the top of their game. First, we have a very familiar character. Joining me today is the Sports Writer of the Year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated. That is James Cook, the Senior Sports Writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. James, I'm looking forward to your fantasy football deep dive. It's good to have you here. How many leagues are you doing this year?
I think 11, I think. So
All right.
not too bad. It was in 9 last year. I got talked into a couple more.
All right. Well, you know he's done his research if he's playing in that many leagues, folks, especially different rules in each league and whatnot. We're also joined today by Chris Haynes, a friend of the podcast. In addition to being an avid Detroit Lions fan and a University of Michigan fan, he also dives extensively into the world of fantasy football, which makes it a perfect fit for this episode. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be back on the podcast again.
And joining us is an expert in the field. We have Aaron Lafferty, the host of Fantasy Plus from Wood TV 8 in Grand Rapids. Aaron, thanks for taking the time. Really look forward to hearing what you have to share about this with us today.
Matt, thanks for having me, and congratulations on your accolades. It's good to be here.
Awesome. And Aaron, for people who might not be familiar with your program, with your show, tell us just a little bit about Fantasy Plus.
We are a streaming show on the Wood TV Plus app here in Grand Rapids, but you can download it anywhere for free. We do a weekly during the season. During the off season, we've been doing every other week as long as everybody's schedules and vacations line up. But we're ready for the season to get started.
That we are, which makes it a perfect time to get ready for fantasy football. If you haven't already drafted, I know some people have already, but the final week of preseason is like, all right, that's the time we've been able to evaluate some of the young talent, some of the new talent, some of the guys switching teams and where you think they might fit. So as a reminder, tell your friends and family about the show, help them find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. The season's just about underway. It's a great time to let other people know about our show. And of course, social media wise, we'd love you to follow us on Twitter. Okay. Once a year, we do this fantasy football with a Detroit Lions focus. Now, guys, when you give your feedback, just kind of consider the advice. Are you gearing this towards a 10-team league or a 12-team league? Are you considering it for a PPR, a half-point PPR, or just a standard one? So just so the listeners can kind of understand the advice you're giving. And another thing that comes to mind to me, at least, is the Lions have so many weapons that the ball is going to be spread around quite a bit. And so that might also impact some of the value of some of these players just because there is only one football on the field at a time. Okay, it's not the first position that gets drafted, but let's talk about quarterback. Jared Goff, a top 10 quarterback in real life, probably not a top 10 quarterback in fantasy football due to being a pocket passer. I think Fantasy Pros has him listed around the 16th spot. So, James, let's start with you. What's your breakdown on Goff? Would you take him as a starter in a 12-team league if you're the last guy to draft? Would you take him maybe as a backup? Start with there. What are you thinking on Jared Goff?
Optimally as a backup, just because I like him as a great backup for a couple of reasons. One, he's in a great offense, so he's going to have plenty of opportunities to rack up touchdowns, whether you're in a 4 or a 6 point per passing touchdown league. So the offense scores consistently, so you don't have to worry about trying to match your backup to your starter's bye week, kind of with a good matchup. And then he's also just dependable. He has never had a serious injury in his NFL career, really, and for a long time. So he's just a guy who knows how to avoid those big hits and stays there and is there every week.
All right, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. Kind of looking at the schedule, he plays much better at home or in a dome. Only has I think 3 games where they're outside, with Green Bay and Chicago late in the year. Pair him up with somebody. Let's say you punt the position and wait. Pair him up with maybe an up and coming, maybe someone that might have some upside with some mobility. Someone like Malik Willis, maybe Jackson Dart. He has that early week 6 bye too. So I like that if you're going to pair him up, because then you could decide by week 6 if you're going to keep him or cut ties with him, or hold on to him through that bye and then maybe get him through to to your second quarterback that you're starting most weeks.
All right. And Aaron, how do you guys view Jared Goff on your show?
Well, we're in Lions country, but we're also closer to Chicago, so we got a lot of Bears on the show. A lot of Bears and the Bears fans in this area. Here's the thing: I don't in a 10-team league, you're not starting Goff. I mean, let's just be honest. I think he's quarterback 15 for me overall, regardless of 10 or 12-team leagues. He is great for the schedule, like you guys were mentioning, where he doesn't have any outdoor games until we're late in the season, and by that point, you may change your mind on the position. He went as a 7th quarterback in the Wood TV League, if that gives you any indication. A little high. People take him a little high, but I think he's a backup, like the other guys were saying, or wait, and you could get him in the late rounds if you're not. Maybe you're not a Lions country fan watching this show, listening to this show. You could get him in the late rounds, but he's a good, solid quarterback. He's great as a backup. Like if you pair him with somebody young, somebody mobile, he'll get you some good upside.
So you're saying in Lions country, he's going to get overdrafted and taken earlier than he should be.
Yes, people are going to take him earlier. Sorry, I'm in that fantasy brain, Matt. Way to bring me back in. Yeah, people are going to reach for him, take him early because they're Lions fans. They want to have a Lion on their team, so he probably goes earlier than you would normally draft in other leagues. I have a league from my home. I grew up in Oregon, and Goff is not going to be drafted in the 7th round in the Oregon League. I can tell you that.
Understandable. James, where would you expect Jared Goff to get drafted?
Probably in the double-digit rounds. I would say around 10 is where I can kind of see him going. And he's in that same group of guys that are going around that time with like Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix. And Bo Nix is a guy who I don't think should be sliding that far, but he has been in a lot of drafts. And if just a couple rounds before that, you can get your Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert types if you want to get them as your starter, and then turn around and get somebody like Goff or those other quarterbacks I mentioned as a good backup. That's usually what I do at quarterback. I wait, but then I take my backup fairly soon after the starter, just so that I have two good guys to choose from. Can play the matchups when need be, or the hot hand, however you want to say it. And you always have a decent guy in case one gets hurt.
All right. And so what I think I hear you saying is even if your strategy is to wait on quarterback and draft one late, there are still going to be other options better than Jared Goff in those later rounds to take as a starter. Chris, anything you'd add on Jared Goff and when you would consider drafting him? I think in your league, he went like in round 14 or 13.
Yeah, he drafted 13th round. All quarterbacks kind of went late in that. After Josh Allen, I don't think the next quarterback was taken until probably the 6th round. A lot of guys wanted to really stack up early on running backs and receivers. And so everything got kind of pushed down. There was some guys on the board that I couldn't believe were still on the board, like Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts until like the 9th, 10th round of our league. So
Wow.
everybody was kind of pushing him down, and Jared Goff was the homer pick and was taken in front of a couple of guys that shouldn't have went, or that should have went in front of him instead. So
Yeah, and your league is a 10-team league, so keep that in mind as
10-team
well,
league,
folks.
yep. Mhm.
So, all right. Well, Aaron, any other thoughts you had on drafting a quarterback, and can a player a player in the league wait on a quarterback and take one late for a strategy?
Yes, definitely. There's names that James and Chris have probably gone gone through in their drafts and looked at, you've got people going late, like Kyler Murray's probably going late. Malik Willis is going late. Bo Nix is going later than he should. But there's some names at the bottom. I mean, if you're feeling good about Daniel Jones' recovery, he's going late. Kind of depends on the scoring in your league. I always preach the know your league. So if you know, like the Wood TV league, it's a 12-team league. We have 6 points for passing touchdowns. Most leagues it's 4. So passing quarterbacks, it kind of evens out with the mobile quarterbacks. But if you're in a league that doesn't do that, look for those mobile quarterbacks late, like a Malik Willis in Miami. If you feel okay about the Miami offense, he's an option. Kyler Murray could be an option. Anybody that can do a little bit of running with their legs. Bo Nix has recovered from his injury, looks great. So he's even going in the mid rounds.
All right. Well, then let's just briefly hit on the top guys at the position. My very elementary research says is Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and maybe Jaden Daniels as the top 3. James, are those your top 3? How are you feeling about that?
I don't have Jaden Daniels as number 3. But I think it's a big drop off after Allen and Lamar Jackson. In a lot of drafts, you don't see that, but that's the way I see it. If you're going to take a running back early, you do take Allen or Jackson. If not, you should wait. Jaden Daniels is a quarterback. I'm in 11 leagues. I probably won't draft him in a single one just because of where he goes. And he's a thin quarterback who likes to run. It's a bad recipe. People who drafted him last year saw exactly how that can turn out. And there's just so much depth at quarterback that you can wait and get somebody just as good.
Yeah, it's really changed a lot. Like you said, after Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, there was definitely a big drop off at quarterback. And it's not like years past where there were only 10 or 11 startable quarterbacks in a league. There are a lot more at this point. Chris, your thoughts on the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks?
Yeah, I went into our draft this year thinking it's either Jared Allen or Josh Allen, or I'm going to go punt it and wait for later. I got Josh Allen late in the 3rd. I wasn't going to miss out on that opportunity this year. Looking at stats, he's on 60% of all rosters that make the playoffs, or you have a 60% chance of making the playoffs if Josh Allen's on your team. So I figure putting him paired up with some good running backs to start was the way I was going to go this year. If I look down the board, Lamar Jackson, I'm not, they got a new offense coming in, new offensive coordinator. Jaden Daniels, I'm still not sold on. Jalen Hurts is going to take a step back, I think, as well. If I was going to draft again and not take Josh Allen, I'd look further down. I'd look at maybe someone like Justin Herbert, who a lot of people are talking about. But Mike McDaniel coming in, new offense, has the arm strength that maybe Tua didn't have in Miami that Mike McDaniel is going to take advantage of this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. And then other guys, that are mobile like Jackson Dart. Hopefully he stays healthy.
For sure. Well, Aaron, finish this category off for us. Thoughts on the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks and any other quarterback thoughts for fantasy football?
Yeah, it's not the country singer, but Alan Jackson is the top of your category. But Drake May, I got Drake May as my 3rd quarterback here, depending on your league settings too. Again, mobile quarterbacks versus pocket quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, they've got a little different look at their offense this year. He's going to be more, the tush push, it didn't get banned. He's going to be under center more. So maybe you can get some points back for Jalen Hurts after a disappointing year last year. And then again, depending on your league settings, I would put Joe Burrow right there if it's a 6-point passing touchdown. Again, depends on your league settings. I just pulled up ours. We drafted on Saturday. Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, all those guys went in the 6th round. That's a 12-team league. So you've got people like Bo Nix, Jared Goff, Jackson Dart. You can wait on till round 7 and 8, and that's in a 12-team league. So you can certainly wait on that position.
Yeah. So it sounds like unless you're getting Josh Allen and maybe Lamar Jackson after that, waiting on the quarterback probably seems to be like the strategy. Again, towards the end, each of these guys will give you their draft philosophies and strategies, and you can kind of dissect it from that once we go through all the positions. So let's move on to running back. Jahmyr Gibbs. checks in at number one overall, and not just number one running back. A few things have changed. David Montgomery is not there, and so Isaiah Pacheco is the backup. Gibbs is to be the bell cow. That's what Coach Campbell has said. He got his new contract. And so, first off, has anybody drafted anybody above Jahmyr Gibbs? Okay.
He's my 101. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 101. So, all right. So he's number one. Bijan Robinson seems to be the number two guy. Any other position you would consider in the top 2 or 3 of the draft? And also, how bullish are you on Jahmyr Gibbs? Let's start, James, with you on that.
Yeah, I have Gibbs number one. Obviously, Bijan's a respectable number two, but the Lions' offense is just better, and the quarterback position is much more stable there. So I think that puts Gibbs ahead of Bijan. And after that, McCaffrey is number 3 for me, but he's then the guy that I generally don't like taking unless he slips in the draft. Just too much injury risk. And after that, for me, it's Taylor, Cook, Genty, and Barkley. Right after that.
All right, Chris, how about you? Gibbs and Robinson, probably the top 2. Are you expecting Gibbs' numbers to take a big jump from last year?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to carry the load, and to see him carry the load for the entire season makes me a little nervous. I'm hoping that they can get Pacheco in there for, at least 30% of the carries, or 30% of the running back touches, just because we don't want to overwork him. He is lightning in the bottle, though. So, maybe in those situations where you might get 2 or 3 carries, he might only need 1 carry to get those yards. But he's a type of guy that can win you a week. You want a guy that can go nuclear in the playoffs, that can score 30, 40 points. He's my obvious number one. I can see someone wanting to choose Bijan over him just because he's built different. And maybe he's more built to take on a larger workload. But as James pointed out, just the offense is not as stable in Atlanta. So I totally agree with having Gibbs be number one. Then from there, it's CMC, Taylor, Cook. I do like Genty, even though he did get hurt this last night, but thankfully it's not something serious.
All right. And then Aaron, how would you describe the situation with Gibbs? Obviously, we're expecting maybe some more carries. I'm not too bullish that he's going to get a substantially larger number of carries, but I do think with an improved offensive line, his numbers will go up. But what are you seeing from Gibbs, and then round out your top 5 of running backs for fantasy football?
I agree with what you guys are saying, Matt. That offensive line getting better, that'll help. I think the gap between Bijan and Jahmyr is wider than most people are saying. I'm concerned about the Falcons' offense. I'm concerned about Tua. Stefanski is your great coach. It's the first year. So I actually think Gibbs, and I'm not a Lions homer, is number one, no doubt. Clear number one pick overall, all categories, all positions. But then it's Robinson. It's not a 1A for me. It's 1 and 2. And then I go Jonathan Taylor 3. I think that offense is a better situation than the 49ers and the mash unit that they've got there. And then I put Cook at 4th because Josh Allen, that the offense is going to move. They're going to get into scoring position. And then I'll put McCaffrey 5. But I mean, he's on the wrong side of 30 now, so we do have to be concerned. That's why I move him down to 5.
All right, and I'm going to say that I echo what you said about the Falcons offense. I actually was not able to draft my league. I had someone do it for me, but one of my instructions was do not draft an Atlanta Falcons player unless they substantially drop, because I've got a lot of question marks about that offense this year. Even though there's some very talented players on it, like you said, I would much rather take the Gibbs factor. Let's talk handcuff for a minute, because if you are drafting Jahmyr Gibbs number 1, which I did, I'm thinking you're taking Isaiah Pacheco as a handcuff. I took him late and whatnot. I think it was around like 12 or something like that, or 13. But I think he's the ideal thing and I think you only want him if you have Gibbs. Otherwise, you're just kind of buying a lottery ticket out there, and they're just going to take up a spot on your bench. But otherwise, Pacheco probably doesn't know other running back has value on the Lions roster in fantasy football. But James, he's not going to have any value unless Gibbs gets banged up for a game or something. Are you drafting Isaiah Pacheco? Is that a must-have handcuff if you have Gibbs, or not necessarily?
Yeah, if you're somebody who believes in handcuffing, Pacheco is definitely Gibbs handcuff. I'm not a big guy into handcuffing, especially unless you're in a league that has a bigger bench, so you can actually sit on those guys. Because otherwise, they're just a wasted roster spot. You end up half the time you end up just cutting that handcuff because you got to pick somebody else up at another position that's hurt. So it almost ends up becoming a wasted pick. But if you're going to draft a handcuff to Gibbs, it's Pacheco. He could have some standalone value too because he's probably going to get a decent amount of goal line carries. So there could be that value where he's, a lottery ticket that you can throw in your flex in a week when you're short some guys or have some injuries, and you hope he's, gets a couple of carries inside the 5 and punches a couple in, which with the Lions offense is always possible. So he's not a horrible guy just to draft if you don't have Gibbs, if you have a deep enough bench.
All right. Chris, any thoughts on Isaiah Pacheco?
Yeah, the way I go into most drafts is I'm not going to draft my handcuff. I'm looking at drafting other handcuffs so that way it just increases my chance of booming later on. And like James said, a lot of times those handcuffs are the first ones drop. So really, when you're looking like 2-3 weeks out before your playoffs and you're looking to solidify your team going into that playoff run, that's where you kind of can go to the waiver wire, go pick up your handcuff at that point. But I'm looking at other handcuffs. I'm looking at, someone like Blake Corum, who might get more of a 50-50 timeshare. Maybe someone like Marshawn Lloyd, where, you got Josh Jacobs, his legal troubles are looming and possibly a suspension coming. Someone that could just instantly become something rather than, and in the long term, from week one, someone you could throw in your flex if you need to. But you're not going to throw Pacheco into your flex starting off unless there's an injury to Gibbs. So.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And Pacheco is a guy who's, coming off 2 years since his injury and hasn't been the same player since before that. Aaron, any thoughts on the handcuff idea and Isaiah Pacheco?
The only other name I would add to what James and Chris have said would be Tyler Algier with the Love is Jeremiah Love high ankle sprain. I mean, he's an explosive player. Once he gets healthy, he's going to take over that backfield. But Tyler Algier, we saw what he did with Bijan Robinson's rookie year. He's going to hang around. He's going to get touches. He's going to take away some, goal line work. He's going to take away some passing work. So he would be a potential handcuff. As far as Pacheco goes, I was drafting Pacheco in the late rounds, either last pick or next to last pick earlier in the season before he got dinged up in the training camp offseason stuff. So he's kind of fallen off. I'm not really drafting him unless I think he could be trade bait for the player that has Jahmyr Gibbs if you want to play some 3D fantasy football and go next level. Other than that, I'm really not looking at Pacheco unless things change with the Detroit running back and it becomes more of a 60-40 split or something like that, where he's getting a lot more playing time, maybe like when it was Sonic and Knuckles.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's move over to tight end. Now things get a little more interesting because we don't have a guy ranked number 1. We don't have a guy who's not likely getting drafted as a starter. We have Sam Laporta. He comes in at number 6. He's dinged up right now with a hip thing. Could be ready for week 1. James, we'll start with you. Do you like Laporta at that 6th spot?
I do. In a 10-team league, you can maybe get him in the 8th round, 7th to be safe. And that's a good value for me to get somebody who has the potential to be the number 1 or 2 tight end, in a great offense. The other thing is he also is the only one of the top 10 tight ends who has an early bye week. Everybody else has a bye week 10 or later. So potentially even in your playoffs or your run when you need to win a few games to get in the playoffs. So if you draft Laporta and he's healthy and you draft a backup tight end, you only have to wait till week 6 to play that guy and then maybe be able to cut him to pick somebody else up.
All right, Chris, what are you thinking on Sam Laporta coming in at number 6 overall? Do you like that spot?
Yeah, that's about where I have him, assuming he doesn't miss time. Of course, if he is looking like he's missing time and you're drafting, getting closer here to week one, he's just going to go further down. But that's one of those that if you have an IR spot, that's an easy one. If you know he's going to miss some time, you're going to pick him up, put him on the IR, and then go try to grab one of those later guys that went undrafted, or maybe go a little bit further down the board and pick him up in the 16th round or something like that.
All right. And Aaron, what are you seeing out of Sam Laporta with the league you're in and just the overall adjustment since the injury?
Yeah, this might be the first time that I disagree with James. I'm moving Laporta down. Sorry, Lions fans. Between the hip injury concerns and kind of what we've said about other things, there's a lot of mouths to feed. You've got Tesla, you've got some other players that are going to be, maybe Brock Wright gets in there and takes some snacks, take some snaps away. He might take some snacks away too. I've got Laporta at 7 overall for tight ends, assuming that Tyler Warren has a healthy Daniel Jones. I go Bowers, McBride, Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, Tucker Kraft, who's coming off an injury, Pitts at 6 because he's the second best on the Falcons, and then Laporta. But then, Kittle's coming back too, so he's gonna, vie for that 6, 7, 8 is kind of a mess for me. I can go back and forth depending on the day on if I put Pitts or Laporta or Kittle there.
All right. Well, and again, in a 10-team league especially, but even a 12-team league, there's a decent number of quality tight ends. This isn't like, fantasy football 15 years ago where there were like 3 or 4 guys and then it was, just who's going to hit this week. James, what's your strategy for drafting a tight end?
It used to be I would draft one early way back in the day, back in like the Shannon Sharp days.
Yeah.
It'd be like second round. I would get Shannon Sharp or somebody because they were so much better than the next best tight end in the league. Bowers and McBride are still kind of that much kind of ahead of people, but you got to spend a second round pick to get those guys. Maybe McBride is there beginning of the third, but probably not past that in a 10 teamer even. And then Loveland is like the next on my team, next on my list. Warren, pretty similar list to Aaron's. And so, I do like that group of guys, Kraft, Laporta, Pitts, and then maybe even Fannin, Kittle, later on for tight ends, rather than spending a second round pick on a tight end when you can use a second round pick and get a really good running back or a really good wide receiver.
All right. Well, Chris, let me ask you this about Trey McBride, because everyone says he's the number 2 tight end. And we saw Arizona's offense last year and they lost their offensive coordinator. And they've got Jacoby Brissett going in as their starting quarterback. Obviously, somebody's got to get the ball there. I know they've got a good receiver as well. I know they've brought some pieces in, but the offensive line might be in question. Are you bullish on Trey McBride at number 2? Is he worth taking early still?
No, he was off my board. He was way too early of a pick. He went, I think, in a late second round, early third round in a 10-team league. That was just too rich for me. I have guys like Colson Loveland ahead of him. I think that there's more upside with some of the other guys later as well. Just because I'm unsure if Jacoby Brissett's even going to be starting for them for the entire year. They might wind up going to their rookie backup, Carson Beck really quickly. So not really going to draft him that high. I'm looking at that same group. Kind of what Aaron was saying, like. Those guys, depending on the day, you can kind of flip flop them. Kittle says he's going to be ready for week 1. I don't think he's going to make the trip to Australia. Why would you throw him on the plane if he's actually going to be playing or not? So my guess is he's going to be best case scenario week 2. They've already said Tucker Kraft's going to be on a snap count to start the year. So how long does that last? So between those 6, 7, 8, 9 spots, it's hard to kind of distinguish between them. I think by the end of the year, as long as Laporta stays healthy, point per game wise, he's going to be right there in that same group.
All right. And yeah, it seems pretty unanimous. Brock Bowers is that number 1 guy. Aaron, what were your thoughts on Trey McBride?
Trey McBride is clearly number 2. the Arizona OC is now the Lions OC, so maybe you can translate that to Mr. Laporta. But Trey McBride was quarterback proof. Didn't matter who was throwing the ball, who was filling in for Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett or whoever their other backups were. Trey McBride is great. But like James said, you're sacrificing running backs, wide receivers, which you need at least two on your roster. You only need one tight end in your starting lineup in most standard leagues. So I think you're giving up too much to get a top tight end when you can wait on the position. You've got names like our good old friends, Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce can still catch the ball. Kittle's coming back from injury. Jake Ferguson with Dallas, he was, their number 3 target last year. If Mark Andrews can be healthy, and then I'll save more for sleepers later, but there's plenty of tight ends available. If you don't get a top tight end, just wait. Just wait.
All right. Well, before we move on to the next category, I got to ask you guys, if Sam Laporta is not playing week 1 or if he misses a game or 2, is Brock Wright or Tyler Conklin worth picking up for a week and playing, whether you're in a 10-team league or a 12-team league? James?
If you drafted Laporta, sure, go for it. If you have, probably you have somebody better though. If you didn't draft Laporta, I would say.
All right. That makes a lot of sense
Unless you
considering
maybe
there's-
drafted Kittle and he doesn't make the plane trip.
Right. Because like you guys said, that even Dallas Goedert, maybe even Isaiah Likely, it goes pretty deep. Chris, would you play either of those guys for a 1-week lineup?
No, I wouldn't play either one of them, and it's to the point that you couldn't clarify who the backup is. You said Conklin or Wright, so we don't know who it is, and it could be both of them. My guess is Conklin's probably a little bit better of a route runner than Wright, but who knows? I think it would come down to who scores a touchdown that week.
All right, Aaron, you echo those thoughts. You have anything else to add on that thought?
I totally agree with all the answers that have been taken, Your Honor.
All right. Well, I want to give a quick thanks to our supporting sponsor, Cherry Republic. They're based in Glen Arbor. They are a Northern Michigan favorite with everything from gourmet snacks to gift boxes and their famous cherry treats. If you're looking to bring a little taste of Michigan to your next gathering, visit cherryrepublic.com. Okay, now we're looking at wide receiver, you guys, and we've seen ascension here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams coming in at the 7 spot, coming in at the 25 spot last year for their preseason rankings. Let's just start with Amon-Ra St. Brown right now. All the guy does is catch passes, which is great in a PPR league especially. I'm seeing he has been considered wide receiver number 3, maybe wide receiver number 4, probably number 4 behind Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, and JSN. And so just looking at St. Brown right now, James, does that sound accurate? I'm using Fantasy Pros website for the information that I'm pulling, just so you know. But what are your thoughts on St. Brown and those assessments?
Yeah, I think St. Brown is maybe one of the safest picks in the back half of the first round. If he's healthy, he's going to get 1,200 yards and score 10 touchdowns probably, and that's going to pretty much be it. So anybody else in the back half of the second round or back half of the first round, you're taking a little bit more of a gamble on. Maybe you're going for ceiling rather than floor, but I think blowing a first round pick is a really good way to lose a fantasy league right away. So the same way if you're a general manager, it's a good way to lose your job is to whiff on a first round pick. So if you're picking in the second half of the first round and Amon-Ra St. Brown is there, unless somebody else has fallen, just take him, be safe. You got your star wide receiver, and then move on.
All right, Chris, what are your thoughts on St. Brown and those numbers we put out there?
Yeah, he's my number 4, assuming Puka doesn't get suspended. I'm with James. He is the safest in the back half of the first round. And if he goes before you, I don't really like many of the receivers after him. There's a lot of question marks on those guys. guys like Justin Jefferson, is he going to have a bounce back year? CeeDee Lamb, is he actually the number one on the team, or is George Pickett's number one on the team now? Drake London's there. That's another Atlanta guy that we're not big fans of. So, and it's like AJ Brown switching teams, Nico Collins in injury history. So if I don't get one of those first four receivers or one of those top two running backs, I'm still going to go running back after that, and kind of wait and see what comes around in the second round.
All right. And you were drafting seventh in your league, and you did not get the chance to draft him because he went pick number 5. And you and I talked. I said, hey, if I didn't have the number 1 pick, if I had like the number 2 pick or 3 or 4, I would have been willing to trade back a pick or two to take Amon-Ra St. Brown because he has got to be one of the safest first round picks, especially in a full PPR league. I mean, I had the number 1 pick, so it was a no-brainer. But if I was anywhere other than that, I would have liked to have Amon-Ra St. Brown on my team. Aaron, how are you evaluating St. Brown? Ranked number 4 receiver, probably falling in around the 5 or 6 spot or 7 spot for a draft.
I can go different ways to answer this question, Matt. I had both Amon-Ra and Jamo on my fantasy league last year. I don't know how that happened in this part of the state, but it happened, and I had them both on my team last year. Amon-Ra is gold money. I actually put him as wide receiver 3 ahead of Puka because of the unknown with Puka and what's going to happen there. Plus, we know Stafford isn't getting any younger, and that offense might not have to do as much this year. If they have this great defense, they might not have to score 30 points a game. So I actually put Amon-Ra higher. I love what you guys are talking about. That first round isn't where you win your draft, but you can certainly lose in the first round. If you mess up that first round pick, especially if you're picking, in the middle and you've got to wait to your second round pick, man, give me Amon-Ra. That's a safe pick. He actually went 7th in our Wood TV league out of 12. He fell to 7, right behind JSN. So I would put Chase, JSN, Amon-Ra, and then Puka. And then it's a toss-up, like you guys were saying, between Lamb, Jefferson, and A.J. Brown for the last spot in my top 5.
Yeah, that top, those first 4, there's a tier that they're in a separate tier from everybody else. There is a drop after that. So that makes a lot of sense.
I like safe in the first round. I like a safe first round pick.
Yeah, 100% on that. James, anything you wanted to add on St. Brown or the wide receivers up top?
I had him 3rd on my list. I have Puka and Chase as my number 1 and 2. But then I had St. Brown and then JSN 4th, just because he has had a history of being dinged up a little bit in his career. So if I get a chance to draft somebody who has no injury history or somebody who gets dinged up quite a bit, I'm taking the guy with no injury history. And then after that, mine is CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and then after that, it's a toss up. There's about 6 guys there that you can put as your basically your number 7 wide receiver.
Yeah, it gets a little gray there in that bottom of the tier 2, I guess you'd call it.
I do think Justin Jefferson is quarterback proof as long as the quarterback is not JJ McCarthy.
All right. Well, let's turn to Jameson Williams. I'm going to be honest. This is a guy I'm just extremely bullish on this year. I wanted him in my league, but the way it all fell, I had to settle for T. Higgins. So I didn't want to overdraft him, although I didn't do the drafting. But I think he's going to take a big step forward from what we've seen out of training camp, even though there's only one football in that Lions offense. I'm excited for what he can produce. Aaron, I'm going to start with you on this one because you had him and you had St. Brown on your team last year. I'm presuming Jamo's getting drafted multiple rounds higher this year, maybe 1 or 2 rounds higher than he did last year, even though his Fantasy Pros ranking is just a few spots higher. I said 23 is where he's listed this year on Fantasy Pros. That may have adjusted in the last week. He was at 25 last year. What are your thoughts on Jameson Williams?
Yeah, it depends on the platform you're on too. Some of the different sites haven't caught up with ADP and where people are drafting. Jamo went where'd he go? He went the 5th round in our 12-team league. So if you want Jamo, it depends on where you are on the snake draft, or if you're in a linear draft, depends on your league again. You might have to take him in the 4th. I don't know where you were targeting him at, but if you try to play the waiting game, you might not get him in the fifth round, especially if you're a Lions fan or you're among Lions fans in your league. I would expect big things from JMO this year, especially with Sam Laporta's injury concerns. So if JMO becomes the number 2 target in that offense, look out.
All right. Well, and that he went in the middle of the fifth round in the
Okay.
league I'm in, and I
Same as
wasn't the
ours.
one drafting, but I got to ask you the guys we took or that I had drafted for me at the turn, the end of the fourth, top of the fifth, were T. Higgins and DJ Moore. So, Aaron, would you want both of those guys over JMO?
T. Higgins T. Higgins, yes, because JMO can have that boom bust week where sometimes he's getting you 2 touchdowns and 50 yards, and sometimes he's getting 3 catches and 25 yards. Where, T. Higgins has Joe Burrow throwing him the ball, and DJ Moore is the one that I would be on the fence on because we know what he can be. We know what he was when he first got to Chicago, when he left Carolina, when he has a competent quarterback. But then what happened in Chicago is kind of like what we're talking about with the Lions is there was too many mouths to feed. So he was the expendable one. So now he has Josh Allen, arguably the best quarterback in the league, throwing him the ball. But like I said on our show, is we've been down this path before. Josh Allen gets a shiny new wide receiver target, and that doesn't work out. So I would be concerned about DJ Moore. That's my only concern. So maybe JMO a little bit higher, but depending on where you have to draft him to. DJ Moore, you can probably get a little bit lower. I was trying to look in our draft. He actually went right after JMO in the 5th round of a 12-team league. So if that helps your answer.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I was on the fence as to which guy I wanted more, honestly, was do I want DJ Moore or JMO? And I'm not the one that made the choice. My draft guy did it for me. So I will just blame him if he's wrong and thank him if he was right, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, Jameson Williams. We talked about where he went. First, I'm going to ask you, would you take him over DJ Moore or would you take DJ Moore over Jameson Williams?
Well, I drafted Josh Allen, so I probably will have completed the stack. But if I was in like just a brand new draft, I would like him depending on how I drafted. I would love him as my wide receiver 3, maybe not necessarily my wide receiver 2, just because of that boom bust potential. And really, his booms aren't like extreme booms. Like I don't think he's scored over 27 points ever in a half point PPR format. So like if I want someone that's going to be that boom bust, it's got to be my wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. There's just too much fluctuation between that position. I got to have at least someone that's stable in my 1 and my wide receiver 2, and I would love to move my flex position.
All right, makes a lot of sense. James, you agree that JMO's more attractive of a receiver than last year, but then also let me know if you think that's true or not. But then also give me your overall assessment on JMO and where you're thinking about him.
I think that if everybody is healthy in this offense, that he'll have just as much of an impact on the game in a reality standpoint, but I think in a fantasy standpoint could take a step back statistically, just because there's so many mouths to feed, especially if they're going to follow through on the promises to throw the ball to Gibbs more, and if Laporta is healthy. Jameson's numbers really took off after Laporta got hurt. So. But I don't have any worry about drafting him either. And in the Scott Fish Bowl, I took him in the 4th round this year, and as my 4th wide receiver, because of
Wait, so you started drafting with you drafted 4 receivers, must be a full point PPR.
it's a odd scoring system where it's a positionless. This year is a positionless league. You
Okay.
have you have 8 utility spots and 3 super flex spots, or seven flex spots and 3 super flex spots. So yeah, I think my first 6 picks were all wide receivers because there's also crazy bonuses for like 20-yard and 30-yard receptions. So which is why I had Jameson Williams targeted and took him in the 4th round before anybody else could. But I was sitting on the turn, and so my 4 wide receivers I got were Lamb, Jefferson, Olave, Jameson Williams to
All right.
start. So you
Obviously
could,
a different scoring system than a lot of the standard
yeah,
ones.
way different, and you could play 10 wide receivers in a week if you wanted to, or 7 receivers and 3 quarterbacks.
All right. Well, Chris, I think I heard you say you want him more as a wide receiver, 3 or 4. And I think that makes a lot of sense because as much as I like him and he's going to affect the game, like you guys said, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Detroit. And there's a lot of other people that are going to get a lot of looks. So that's my only reservation on Jameson Williams.
Yeah, me too.
Isaac Tesla. I know the reports out of camp have not been, lightning in a bottle, exciting like it was when he was in Green Bay making his first catch in the NFL. But is that a guy you're drafting at the end of the draft at some point, or even putting on your roster, James?
Probably not, unless, God forbid, Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams gets hurt. Um, Although I am going to give myself a little humble brag, is that I think last year on this same episode, I said that something like Isaac Tastelock could be a guy who could have like 20 catches and 6 of them are for touchdowns.
I'm gonna go back and check that recording because no, I totally believe you, and you're probably right on that one. I mean, yeah,
I
no,
don't
you
know if
did say that.
if those are the exact numbers, but it was close. I don't nail something that much, so I got to give myself a little bit of credit when I can.
All right, well deserved. Chris, any thoughts on Isaac Tesla?
I'm later on in the draft, especially like in a 10 team. He's not on my radar. If you're in a deeper league, maybe like a 12, 14 team, maybe later on in the draft. But I'm gonna take some shots at the unknown situations, like the Miami wide receivers. Maybe take a shot at, like someone like Cyrus Allen. Stribling from San Francisco. Take those shots on the unknowns, the guys that you can see what their usage is really early, and if they're like below 70% usage for snap counts, then you cut ties with them and move on and pick up someone else.
All right, and Aaron, how are you viewing Isaac Tesla, number 3 receiver on the Lions?
I guess I'm the Isaac Tisla stan of this group. I'm taking him in the last round or the next last round, depending on how it goes. We're talking 12 team, 14 team leagues. Of course, we're not talking about 10 team leagues. There's just, and unless you have gigantic roster, bench spots.
Sure.
Last year on this show, our sports director, Jack Doles, told me Tisla wouldn't be worth anything. And then the week that I played Jack, he caught a touchdown and he was in my lineup and I won the matchup. So I'm just going to say that. So I've got a little spot in my heart for Tisla. He's not going to start for me. He's going to sit at the end of my bench until something shakes out with the offense of the Lions, and maybe he starts getting more playing time. But like you've said, Matt, over and over, there's so many mouths to feed in that offense. Until we get some clear picture with Laporta, or are they going to play a lot of 12 team personnel, a lot of tight end sets? Then he's probably not getting on the field much, and that's a concern as a fantasy owner, that you've got a guy sitting on your bench that is sitting on the Detroit Lions bench, not playing as many snaps as he did last year. But if you're in like Dynasty or a deep league, yes, grab him in the last round or next to last round and take a chance. You never know.
I love that story you told about Jack. Tell him I say hello. It's been a while since I've talked to him, but how poetic. Now I have to ask though, did you draft him just because he's a West Michigan guy, or how did he get into your lineup for that game?
Oh man, I'd have to go back in the history of the league. I either drafted him or I picked him up in week 1. I can't remember, but I was saving him for a bye week, and it just so happens that Jack was saying on the show, I don't think he's going to be fantasy viable. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to play him this week, and Jack thought he had the win. Tisla came up, got his one. I think it was one catch that week. I think it was against the Bengals, if I remember correctly. Touchdown. I got the win, so that's all that really matters. So.
Well,
Those are
congratulations.
the ones you remember. The bad beats are the ones you try to forget.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I like what you said there, Aaron, too. Like, what are they going to come out in? Are they going to come out in more of a 12 personnel? Because they do have some good tight ends, especially a couple of good blocking tight ends.
Right.
So if they're coming out in that, they're not having that third receiver on the field. So if you do draft them, kind of watch what's going on with their personnel. And if they're running a lot of 12 personnel, then cut ties. Or pick those games where it's going to be a shootout, or that they're going to have to be coming from behind. Maybe it's that week when they're playing Buffalo, they're going to have to throw more.
Right.
All right. Well, let's venture to the other side of the ball for a moment here. Defense. Not every league does defenses anymore. That's becoming a new thing. Going the kicker route, but we'll still talk about them. The Lions defense, well, the schedule's much better than last year, so you got to start right there. Preseason, they look good, but it's preseason. So are they a streaming defense only? Is there something better? Or are they something better, I guess, than just a streaming defense? Do they fit into your top 10, 12 defenses, James?
I wouldn't say so from a fantasy perspective. Unless they convert more of those pressures into sacks than they did last year. Last year they had a tendency of just getting pressures and pressures and pressures and not getting sacks. And sacks is what counts. Pressures don't count for his fantasy points. So, from a fantasy perspective, no. I know that there's some national guys around that really think the Lions defense is going to just be awful this year, and I don't know where they're coming from. I think they're just looking at the safety situation and nothing else, and they're pumping up. Then one of them I heard was talking about drafting Goff because he's like the Lions defense is so awful they're going to be playing catch up all the time, and I was like, what are you talking about? But he's a Chicago guy, so. I don't think the Lions defense is going to be bad by any means. I don't know that it'll be top 10, especially in fantasy where sacks are such an important thing and interceptions even. They don't have, minus Kirby Joseph, they don't have a lot of guys that force interceptions. They're good at knocking the ball down, but not picking it off. So from a fantasy perspective, I don't know. I think they're better in real life than they are fantasy.
Yeah, I think if Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph are both healthy, that changes a big part of the calculus on that. You're increasing the turnover potentials and whatnot. That's obviously not the case. Chris, thoughts on the Lions defense? Are they a team that you would consider a 10, 11, 12 spot? Are they worth a starting defense in a fantasy football league?
I mean, I would consider that. I mean, they are playing a last place schedule, right, for the division, so they
That's
do
true.
have a pretty easy strength of schedule. But like James pointing out, like you need you need sacks and you need, turnovers. And I don't see that happening unless maybe Joseph comes back, or maybe Hutchinson just has an incredible year and just doesn't get double teamed every play. But other than that, like you could play them, stream them in a good matchup. Maybe when they're at home, playing one of those bottom dweller teams. But other than that, I would look elsewhere.
All right, Aaron, your thoughts on the Lions defense? You kind of following suit, or is the schedule help enough to make it worthwhile, or is it just too much of a question mark?
I they're definitely not a top 10 defense for me in fantasy. I think they might scoot into if you're in a 12 team league. I think they might be a starting defense for you. I was just looking while you guys were talking. They play the Jets in week 3. They play the Cardinals in week 5. So maybe you can stream them week 3, week 5. But now, if you guys are in a league with everybody that's listening, that's not going to work out. So, there's potential there, depending on their schedule. But, like Chris and James mentioned, there might be some better options around. Just looking at ESPN, for example, the Browns and the Jaguars and the Chargers are behind them. I would rather have the Jaguars or the Chargers just as things are constructed right now. But if the Lions fell to me, if I punt the position and I wait because I didn't get a top defense, I wouldn't mind having the Lions as my defense. I wouldn't feel like, oh, it's a loss. I'm going to, take a bunch of zeros. But, and depending on your scoring in your league, again, I've mentioned that before, depending on your league scoring, maybe defenses are better. If they're going to get in some shootouts, though, I would be concerned.
All right. Well, let's stay with you and talk about those top defenses, Aaron. Who are the top 2 or 3 defenses you're looking at throughout the league right now?
You guys might not know this. If people that watch Fantasy Plus know this, I'm a Seahawks fan. I grew up in Oregon. I've got family in Washington. The Seahawks are right up there. But unfortunately, right now on paper, it's the Texans, the Rams. We'll see if Aaron Donald plays, depending on when, you're watching this show. He may already be excuse me, he may already be with the Rams. But Texans, Broncos, Seahawks, Rams are my top 4. If I don't get one of those 4, I'm waiting on the position, and I might take them in the next to last round. In the last round, I'm taking a kicker and hoping for the best. But, there's some good teams out there still beyond those those four. But I got to pick up the Seahawks. Maybe I reached a little bit in the Wood TV League, but I had to have at least one Seahawk on my team.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that one. I got one line on my team. It's Jahmyr Gibbs. So, yeah, you have
That's
to
the
have
one to
something
have.
for that team. Chris, defense. I know you didn't have defenses in your league. Did you do any research on defense? Do you have any thoughts on who the top two or three defenses are out there?
Yeah, we got rid of defense and kickers a long time ago. It's a lot more fun when you have more flex spots. But yeah, I mean Texans are coming back as one of the best defense. However, I don't like their schedule. You're coming off, you're playing Buffalo week one. That's going to be tough. I think Rams are going to be up there, one or two, especially if Aaron Donald comes back again. Seahawks, Broncos, those are kind of my top three. Maybe after that, maybe it's. Um, Someone like Patriots just because they play Miami twice. That makes it makes for a nice schedule for them. Um, but other than that, I probably would punt that position if I don't get one of those top three that I mentioned.
Okay. James, round it out. What are your top two or three defenses?
Well, I'm usually my whole kind of strategy on defense and kickers is, if you're a 16 round draft, most everybody drafts their defense in the 15th round and their kicker in the 16th. So I just move it up one round. And then that running back or wide receiver that you were looking in that one round is probably going to be there in the last round because everybody's drafting kickers and defenses. So get your first guy at that position. My top four are the same as everybody else's top four: Houston, Seattle, Rams, Broncos. And then after that, it's who do you want? The Patriots, I think, would probably be the fifth there. But after that, I don't really care after those four. Those would be the four that I would like to get at that position.
Okay. Well, let's go to kickers. If people don't play with defense, they're probably not playing with kickers, but some people still have kickers. And in case you still use them, let's talk about Jake Bates. I've got in my notes he comes in at number 3, but now I'm looking, it looks like he's been moved down to number 8 on the list here. Uh, you know, I'm expecting a high scoring offense from the Lions, and he kicked pretty well last year. And so, I mean, again, I'm probably taking Jake Bates just as a homer pick to have the guy on my team that's a team that a guy that plays for the Lions, and I'm probably not drafting early for. I mean, I'm not draft one of the. I'll draft a kicker in one of the last 2 rounds, but if you're drafted in Michigan, Bates will probably come off higher than other spots. So, James, any kicker thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bates could have a good season, but Dan Campbell goes for it on fourth down so much it takes away his field goal opportunities, and they turn into extra points. So I don't mind having Bates as your kicker. He's changed his emotion this year, where he's starting a yard closer to the line of scrimmage than he did last year to try to generate more power and quickness and get fewer blocked because he had one or two blocked last year. So Brandon Aubrey is your top one, I would say, and then Kymie Fairbairn, probably number two. I watched a preseason game the other day where he hit a 57-yarder and had a decent amount to spare. So, and Cam Little, same. He's basically Jake Bates on a different team. Uh, so, and then after that, it just becomes a whole bunch of guys where it's just a kicker.
Yeah. So basically, if you don't get one of those top 4, Jake Bates is a great guy to throw in that next mix, is what it sounds like.
Yep. And I would maybe put him in that top four. Jason Myers is also a pretty good one for Seattle.
All right, Chris, what are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on kickers?
Yeah, I mean, you go for those high scoring offenses. I mean, that's really what you go for. Brandon Aubrey is like, I think he scored a lot more than almost everybody last year. So he was number one. I love the Cam Little pick by James there. I did have a league where I did draft him last year just because he kicked that 68-yarder or whatever it was in preseason. But Harrison Butker's another one. He just will have set the NFL record this past weekend. Too bad that those don't count for those guys, but. Looking for those high scoring offenses, you're going to be guaranteed on most drives to get a chance either at a field goal or at least an extra point. So that's the way I would go.
All right. And Aaron, thoughts on the kicking position, and do you have Jason Myers on your team?
I wish I, excuse me, I wish I did, but in the 14th round. I wasn't taking a kicker in the 14th round. But Jake Bates was the 7th kicker taken in our league, which was kind of surprising. And he was taken by a Chicago Bear fan, which I thought was even more surprising. So yeah, here's my thing about Bates, which James talked about, is Campbell goes for it too often. I don't want a kicker. I want a kicker like Jason Myers, Butker, Little, Fairbairn, the ones that they're gonna kick it more often. They're not always gonna go for it on 4th down. Yes, the Seattle Seahawks will go for it occasionally on 4th down, but they will take the points. I've been a I'm school of kickers. I've studied kickers. I have kickers in all the leagues I play in. I'm not a commissioner in all the leagues. And I'm all about thinking about kickers, and you got to think about, like Chris was saying, you want a kicker on a good offense. You want a kicker on a team that doesn't go for it all the time. So sorry, Lions fans. I wouldn't take Jake Bates unless you won a Lion on your team and you didn't get anybody else on your team. I would support it because he does have a strong leg. Maybe Campbell won't go for it as much and you'll get more points. But give me somebody on a good team does take the points when it's time to kick field goals. Sorry, I got excited about kickers and probably people have tuned out at this point. Sorry.
No, you're good, and
there is
agree.
strategy that goes in kickers.
Oh, there isn't that
There
strategy. The
totally
more
is.
traditional approach makes a lot
Right.
of sense.
Yeah.
Even though the difference usually between kicker number 3 and kicker number 12 at the end of the season is like 1 point per game, there's still some thought that goes into it. You don't want to get the kicker that's missing kicks like Jake Moody, who got cut.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody like that. Just look for guys that are making kicks in the preseason.
All right. Well, now we're going to go to the overtime segment of the fantasy football show here, which probably won't feature many Lions players, but we're going to talk a little bit about sleepers, about any guys to avoid, and then overall drafting philosophy. So, sleeper guys that you have your eye on, and it could fall into one of two categories. It could be a guy that everybody knows and you think they're just going to have a great season, like Jameson Williams, if that was the case. Or it could be a guy that nobody's talking about, but you think is going to significantly outperform their spot. Like, I don't know why, but I've got high hopes for DJ Moore, which is why he's on my team. And I think he is going to take a big step forward or back to what he was before. And so I really like him in the 5th round there. But James, let's start with you. 1 or 2 guys, and whether it's an early one, mid round, or a late round, somebody who's maybe you think is going to exceed their drafting position that somebody should follow up on.
Well, on the DJ Moore thing you mentioned, the other thing that's nice about him is that he's reunited with his offensive coordinator from when he was a star in Carolina. So I think that's another thing that goes in his favor in Buffalo. But for sleeper, for me, it's usually guys that you can get around 10 or later. And so for me, it's looking at guys, running backs like J.K. Dobbins or Kenny Gainwell or Rico Dowdle. Brooks is another one that I like. And that's like guys you can maybe get in the 10th or 11th round who could be an every down or most down running back for you. I like Mark Andrews at tight end because everybody is letting him fall. And he can still, I think, be a number 1 tight end. There's no Isaiah Likely there anymore. Rashad Bateman now is in legal trouble, so the number 2 receiver could be gone. So all those things are going to go to Mark Andrews. So I like him. If you can get him as your tight end too, great. But if you're waiting and punting on the position and you get Mark Andrews, I think you'll be decently happy there. And TJ Hawkinson, similar as your number 2 tight end. Kyler Murray loves throwing to the tight end.
All right.
Always has for his whole career. And
Yeah.
and they're going to have, I think, a pretty decent offense.
Yeah. The Vikings seem to have a decent offense regardless of who they have in at quarterback over there. So
And
that's
Hawkinson's always a lottery ticket because he's dinged up. But if you don't have a whole lot of other injury-prone guys on your team and you're looking for a second tight end, I think he's worth a swing as somebody who could put in back end tight end 1 numbers.
All right, Chris, sleepers, guys above value, someone you're targeting because you think, hey, that guy's going to do really well this year, and or somebody that, again, nobody's looking at, but you think they should.
So a guy that I went into my draft wanting, just because I think he's one of those middle tier guys right now, but I think he has that chance to jump into the top 7 or 8 wide receivers. Is Jalen Waddle switching teams? Um, he kind of reminds me of playing like that Michael Thomas role that Sean Payton likes so much. Plus, like he's got also that downfield threat that Bo Nix has that skill set that he likes to throw downfield. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. Guys like Parker Washington, Josh Downs, he's going to get a lot of targets. Other guys that I like, Cyrus Allen from Kansas City. I think that there's a chance that he might be the stud that Mahomes has been looking for. Rashid Rice hasn't looked great coming back from his injury. He's still not full speed, and if he could get off to a good start, he might just get integrated right into that offense. I agree with James on J.K. Dobbins. Guys like those murky backfields too that you're kind of unsure about that you could take a shot at in those late rounds. Like, is it Jordan Mason or Aaron Jones? Well, I think Jordan Mason fits that scheme a lot better. The outside zone scheme is where he thrives. That's where the San Francisco offense goes. So they're adopting that this year. They needed a change. O'Connell's like, I have to change it up. So I have a good feeling about him as well. Guy like Woody Marks, he might take over and actually take more of that 50-50 timeshare from David Montgomery. He has the juice. They're going to be probably down in some games, or they're going to have the lead and they're going to want to grind it out. So they're going to have to go to a 50-50 because I don't think David Montgomery can handle that much of a workload. 20, 25, 26 touches a game. They're going to have that kind of that even split. Looking at tight ends. If you want to look at someone late, Dallas Goedert. I think Aaron brought him up earlier. His splits when Devontae Smith or AJ Brown were out, like he just caught touchdowns. Now, does that efficiency continue? That's a good question. Does Jalen Hurts do a little bit more out of center or going under center because they're going to go under center more? I think that actually leans more towards the tight end because they can do a lot more play action. Because I think Barkley's going to be able to run the ball a little bit better than he did last year. Another guy like Chig Okonkwo, switching over to Washington, he's just an athletic freak. So if Jane Daniels does take that step forward, which I'm not sure if he can or not, but they need a number 2 target in there behind Scary Terry, and that he might be the guy that can do that. I'm looking at quarterbacks, guys late. I love Justin Herbert as value right now, but if you want someone in double digit rounds, probably Tyler Show from New Orleans. He came on. He runs a little bit. He's seasoned. I think he is like 27 years old as a rookie last year. He played a lot of college ball. But Brock Purdy as well. He's got probably the best pass catchers that he's ever had. And as long as they can stay healthy, and as long as he can stay healthy, that's going to be a key. He's usually been a top 7 or 8 quarterback in points per game when he's healthy, and when all of his weapons are healthy too. I think he's got a good shot at jumping into that top 5 or 6 as well.
Okay, good number of guys listed there. I think David Montgomery has been underused most of his career. I'm just going to say that. Like, he is a hard runner. I watched him in Chicago, and I always thought the Chicago coaches did a horrible job with him. And that's why I was thrilled when the Lions got him, because I'm big on David Montgomery. But I do hear that he's going to probably be sharing more than maybe some people were expecting. But you trade for a guy and you bring him in. So I'm expecting a lot out of Montgomery, but I wouldn't be so, I guess from what I'm hearing, there's going to be more of a share than I expected. And then as far as Herbert goes, the only thing that cautions me about Herbert is I think the center for the Chargers just got injured. And so that could be a big change right there. That's my only concern on that one, but a lot of guys to consider.
That really hurt them last year, not having a good line as well. Their line got dinged up really early. And so that really hurt the run game, and then obviously protecting Herbert as well.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, who are you seeing here for sleepers or guys that are going to be above value for where they're being drafted, or just guys that you're really excited about this year that you want to grab?
Well, James and Chris took a lot of my answers, but luckily I had a long list.
And feel free to reinforce some of their answers if you're like, hey, those were good ones.
Well, a familiar name to Lions fans, TJ Hawkinson. You can get him in the late rounds. He's often going undrafted. Kyler Murray targeted Trey McBride a ton, so we know that he does target tight ends. And that's an offense that, if things are clicking, they have a great defense. They're going to get the ball a lot. They're going to have chances to score. Give me TJ Hawkinson. Kyler Murray's a shorter guy. He can see TJ. TJ's big, right? So, throw it to TJ. That was my tight end sleeper. As far as wide receivers that you guys haven't mentioned, I think Chris might have kind of alluded to it. Dejon Stribling in San Francisco. He's moving up the boards because, he's one of the healthy people, and then he got dinged up. So, should be good to go by week 1. I took Stribling. I reached for him. He was one of those players. Sometimes you just get the guy that you feel like, Matt, you were talking about DJ Moore. Get the guy you feel you got that gut feeling about. And I'm a Seahawks fan. Having a 49er on my roster is offensive. It would be like you guys having Packers and Bears on your teams. But I took Dejon Stribling. I have a good feeling about it, so I took him. He's a sleeper. You can probably get him in like the 8th, 9th round, depending on your league, 10-team, 12-team. And then Chris Godwin. People are forgetting about Chris Godwin. Baker Mayfield didn't get his contract. He's going to be out there to prove something. Chris Godwin, he's either the number 1 or the number 2. Mike Evans is gone. He's in San Francisco now. He's on that MASH unit in San Fran. Give me Chris Godwin in the 10th, 11th round. I mean, I can't believe he's sitting around there that long. If you see him in your draft that late, pick him up. You've got either the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in Tampa Bay. They throw the ball a lot. Bucky Irving might be the number 1 with Ibuka's health, Bucky's health as well. They got Kenny Gainwell to dump off, but as far as a possession receiver, Chris Godwin all day. David Montgomery, that's not really a sleeper. He's like 4th or 5th round. So I was trying to, make it a later round player. You guys mentioned Jordan Mason. I'm in on Jordan Mason this year. Kenny Gainwell, I'm in on Kenny Gainwell this year. Both of those guys are 10th round or later in 10 and 12 team leagues. And then late quarterbacks, I'm in on Kyler Murray. I've kind of alluded to it with the TJ Hawkinson pick. Also Justin Jefferson. If you're late, if you're picking like 10, 11, 12, and Jefferson's there, you could get your stack, Chris, last round or late, 10, 11, depending on how many roster spots you have. 10th, 11th round, pick up Kyler Murray. You got that stack with Jefferson. If it works, boom, you've made the league. And also Malik Willis. He's late round Miami. We saw what he did in Green Bay. He's taken a couple years since he came out of Liberty. I think he could be a steal at the end of the draft. Get him as your backup quarterback if you need to have a backup quarterback, or pick him up after week 1. Hopefully you can get him before he becomes that player that everybody's picking up on the waiver or the fab, however your team picks up free agents.
Sorry, right.
Malik Willis in Miami. If you're not familiar, he's now the quarterback in Miami.
Yes, he is. Yes. So, awesome, Aaron. Appreciate those insights and whatnot there. James had a couple more guys he wanted to add to the sleeper list. You guys may have inspired him.
I do like the Malik Willis one, especially if you're in a super flex or 2 QB league. And he's going to be a quarterback. I think a lot of people are just not going to be drafting because the Dolphins are expected to be so horrible, but they're going to have to be playing catch up, and he's going to have to throw the ball a lot, and he's going to have to run. So yeah, it's like in baseball, everybody wants to draft the closers from the good teams, and they hate closers from the bad teams, but the distance between them is not that different. Bad teams just put their closer in whenever they have a chance to win a game.
Right.
So, but a couple of wide receivers that I like too. Everybody is talking about Luther Burden for the Bears. So take advantage of that, and 2 rounds later, get Rome Odunze.
Yep.
I think they're going to put up about the same numbers. And then I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to rebound this year a bit. I don't think he's going to be what he was 2 years ago, but he's not going to be what he was last year either. He's going to be closer to 2 years ago. I think he can really rebound, and the Jaguars look to have potentially a pretty good offense around him. So.
All right. Thanks, James. Let's go to the opposite side here then. Players to avoid. Chris, let's start with you on this one. Are there guys that you're like, I'm just not interested in this guy, whether maybe they're being drafted too high, so it's not worth it, or you think you're going to see regression, from last year, and so not live up to expectations. Is there one or two guys that really jump out to you?
Yeah, I think I already alluded to it earlier. I was off on Trey McBride. I was off on Lamar Jackson just because I still think his draft cost is a little too much, and we don't know what that offense is going to look like. So along with that offense, Derrick Henry, I love the guy. He seems to get better as the year goes on. Is this the year that he finally drops off? He's just getting up there. He's 32 years old. Um, Other than that, if I'm looking at running back position, um, uh, anyone on the Jets, I wasn't really a fan of Brees Hall. Just that offense, and I was off on Garrett Wilson too, just because of that offense. He's going to get a lot of targets, but I don't know if they're going to score that much. So I was kind of off on them. Pretty much the whole Miami offense, other than Achane. I do have faith in him still, just because he is a target hog, and if there's anything that they can teach Malik Willis to do is to throw it, 4 or 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and let Achane just go. And Malik Willis does have that rushing upside, I guess, as well, to kind of keep some drives going. But other than that, everyone in Miami, I'm off on as well, and wasn't a fan of Drake London at his cost either, just because I don't trust Tua and I don't trust Michael Penix either.
All right, Aaron, guys you're avoiding, guys that again aren't worth their draft spot, or you just think are going to regress from last year.
These might be controversial, Matt. Let's start with Jackson Dart. I'm in a keeper league. I had Jackson Dart. He would have been a 15th round pick for me. I was high on Jackson Dart. I thought, oh man, I've got myself a franchise quarterback in a keeper league. And then they started getting on the field, and he's been in the blue tent in the preseason, and he seems to even, I thought Harbaugh, might be able to talk some sense into him. He's still running with reckless abandon. That's great for a mobile quarterback to be running, but if he's going to spend all of his time in the blue tent, I don't want to have anything to do with Jackson Dart. Plus, everybody else has kind of caught wind of how good Jackson Dart was last year, and his draft price has moved up too high for me. If I could get him late, sure, but he's going in around Bo Nix and other players that I'm much higher on with the offense that they're on. We don't know what this Giants offense is going to be with Harbaugh. Are they going to be a run first offense, and then Jackson Dart is just scrambling for yards? Is it going to be like what we had with Lamar running the ball? We don't know. So I'm out on Jackson Dart at cost. Again, all these bus picks for me are at their cost, where you actually have to draft them. I'm not saying they're bad players, but where they are, where you have to pick them. Sorry, Chris, I'm out on Achane. Second round is too high for me for Achane on that Miami offense. That might just
I
be.
agree with you on that. I think he's still going to catch passes, but he's not going to be the second round draft.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but I think second round is way too high on a team that might be bottom 3 offense this year. Harold Fannin, he was great last year. Guess what? Shedeur is not the starter. Deshaun Watson's the starter. Harold Fannin was Shedeur Sanders' #1 target last year. That's why his numbers were so high. And they drafted Concepcion. They drafted Daryl Boston. So they drafted 2 rookies to improve that wide receiving core. So I think Fannin's numbers come down because of the competition and who's the quarterback. Now, if things change and Shadeur's back in there, maybe Fannin moves back up. But I think as far as drafting him, he's going in the 6th or 7th round. That's too high for me. If he comes down a little bit, maybe okay. But I don't think he's going to have the numbers he had last year. And then my 4th bust, again, at cost, I'm concerned about Brian Thomas Jr. because there's also Parker Washington. There's also Jacoby Myers. There's also Travis Hunter. Brenton Strange as the tight end just got paid. Those are 5 targets in that passing offense. I'm concerned Brian Thomas, again, at cost, taking him in the 6th or 7th round, he may not pay off as a top 6 player on your team, taking him that high. What I think that does mean is that Trevor Lawrence could be a great option for you. Didn't mention him in the sleepers, but I don't know if he qualifies as a sleeper. But with all those targets, I think Trevor Lawrence is great. So I got to end on a positive for you, Matt.
All right, appreciate that. Always good to have some positivity to kick around, and Trevor Lawrence, that's a guy to maybe keep an eye on. But we got to finish off this category of guys to avoid, unfortunately. And James, you've got a few guys on your list.
Well, the first one is don't go crazy on drafting guys with injury concerns. Um, you can do a couple, and those are guys that are going to fall, so you can get some deals, but don't do a ton of them, and don't do guys a bunch of them that you're going to have to depend on starting the first week. Bench, fine, let him
Yeah.
get healthy or whatever, but don't draft a whole bunch. Um, I'm a guy who will take a discount on a player when they fall a couple rounds because they got dinged up. There was people yesterday that were getting Ashton Genty in the 8th round because people thought he was out for the season.
Wow.
Uh, but a couple of guys that I'm going to look to avoid. Javonte Williams' price in the 3rd round is too high. Um, I had him last year. I was in 9 leagues last year. I had him in 7. I drafted him a lot late. But what I did in a lot of those leagues is I drafted all 3 Cowboys running backs late because I didn't know who was going to be their starter, and then I just ended up cutting the other 2 and playing Javonte as in most leagues my flex. Um, but in the 3rd round, I don't know that it's worth it. And sticking with Dallas, George Pickens, uh, all of his stats came when CeeDee Lamb was out. Lamb is back this year. It was clear when Lamb was healthy, Dak prefers throwing to Lamb rather than Pickens, and Pickens was clear second fiddle. So his price tag of 3rd round, even 2nd, is way too high for me to like him. I had Pickens in several leagues last year, but last year you were getting him in 6th, 7th round. So it was a deal there. But those are 2 guys that I think their ADP is just too high for me to be in on.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And guys, those are guys you're going to want to avoid. So, all right, we're going to do lightning round here. The last 2 topics we're going to talk about. Just hit the nuts and bolts of them. Your overall drafting philosophy. What is something that people should know? What's something you go into with the draft? So let's start with that. Chris, what do you got for your overall drafting philosophy?
So overall, like I went into this draft, kind of later on. I was 7th pick. So I kind of did a lot of mocks to see where everyone was falling. And typically my draft strategy is I'm not going to reach for somebody unless I really want someone. I'm going to take people at value. So this year I felt like I needed to draft a couple running backs early because I don't like a lot of the running backs later. And really that 2nd tier wide receivers I'm not really fond of. So this year I felt really good about where I was drafting, going 2 running backs early, and then just kind of just shotgunning the position later on. I did take Josh Allen at value late 3rd round. And then once I do that, I'm not going to take tight end until later on, and shotgun as many of those running backs and wide receivers as possible. Take a tight end later. And I didn't even wind up taking a backup quarterback because it's Josh Allen. I'm not going to start anyone else over him. So that's the way I felt this year. If I was in the kind of the first, if I was like picks 3 through 5, I would have went with one of those receivers and then probably came back and went 2 running backs. Just because again, I don't like a lot of the running backs later on. You really got to hit on those positions and make sure that you have depth as well, because injuries happen. Just like with Genty yesterday, that was a big scare for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. Your drafting philosophy can adjust from year to year based on what the talent is looking like in the draft, kind of like
and running backs are pushed way up this year from years past. I feel like really that 2nd and 3rd tier is pushed up even higher than the 2nd tier wide receivers. So if you don't take them early, they're gonna get bottled up really quickly, and it's gonna start drying up.
All right. Aaron, how about you? What's your overall drafting philosophy this year?
Well, I'm willing to have different strategies going in. I always preach practice, practice, practice. The NFL teams practice all the time. Practice a mock draft. Practice at least one mock draft on every platform for, a lot of us play in multiple leagues. I'm not in as many leagues as James, but there's different platforms and they have different, the queue is different. The notifications are different. The speed is different. Like, just get used to that, and then practice either the draft slot that you know that you're in, or draft from different positions, and then see, like, hey, if I take a running back in the first round, what happens with the rest of how it falls? Now, in the second round, I'm feeling like I have to take a wide receiver because now I don't like those mid-round wide receivers. So just, practice, see what happens if you start with two wide receivers. Check out how, like Chris was saying, and we say it on Fantasy Plus all the time, those running backs, it falls off a cliff. You are drafting guys that you're just hoping are going to get some points for you. So practice, see what happens if you take a quarterback in the third or fourth round, see what happens with your team. Um, I always have the, know your league. If you're in a league like our work league here, there's a lot of Bears and Lions fans, so those players are going to get pushed up. And if you want one of them, you're going to have to take them earlier. So kind of know your league and know your league mates, because at a TV station, I know, Matt, you worked in TV. You got people from all over the country. So we've got Chargers fans, we've got Raiders fans, we've got Chiefs fans, Seahawks fan. Kind of know your league and get the tendencies, because maybe you can snipe somebody, it's getting in that round. That person's probably going to take their favorite team. So I always try to make sure that I've got depth, because running back and wide receiver, you need at least two every week. And we know this is a violent sport and injuries happen. So I always go for depth at running back and wide receiver. Sometimes I'll leave a draft with one quarterback and one tight end. Obviously, one defense and one kicker. If you're drafting more than one defense or one kicker, you should be kicked out of a league.
All right. Well, that's the best piece of advice: how to not get kicked out of a league, folks. So,
Practice, 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 Matt.
all right, James, how about you? What's some of your overall drafting philosophy?
Yeah, piggybacking a little bit off of what one thing Aaron said was is knowing your league and knowing teams that they like or don't like. Over the last few years, I'm in a lot of leagues, obviously with Lions fans, and because of that, I end up taking a lot of Bears and Packers players because they let them fall. Last year, I ended up with a lot of Caleb Williams, a lot of DeAndre Swift, actually a decent number of Jordan Love as my backup quarterback in a lot of leagues, just because the Lions fans didn't want to take him and let him slide. So I took the value, and I if you're a fantasy team, you can't play like that. You can't let your emotion come into it. You gotta take who you take. I
Right.
hated the Cowboys as a kid. I still drafted Emmitt Smith. So you take who you want. And similarly, I look for players who have burned other teams in the past, and you can get a discount on those guys, like Marvin Harrison this year. A bunch of people have drafted him the last 2 years. He's been a disappointment. Dude's uber talented. It's gonna click some point.
Right.
Kind of like Pitts. He had that one really good season 4 or 5 years ago, and then since then has been pretty average. And then last year popped off again. And I had him in a decent number of leagues because people just kept letting him go. So some of those guys that have just been disappointments, or other teams just don't want to take, or if they're slipping because they have a legal thing or anything like that. People aren't drafting Aaron Jones because they think he's going to get charged in this, but it doesn't really look like he's going to. It's been quite a long time. There's been absolutely no news on that. So I think Aaron Jones is a fairly safe pick. He's going to split time with Jordan Mason, of course, but I mean, as late as you're getting him, you're getting somebody who's going to regularly get carries, and that's got some value.
All right. Well, man, I want to thank you guys, man. You have thrown a lot of information out there, given a lot of good assessments. Lions players, top players, sleepers, people to avoid. Let's hit the final thoughts. All right. Any last piece of advice you have for folks playing fantasy football this season? Chris, we'll start with you.
In the end, it's a game that we play. It's fake football. Obviously, don't cheer for injuries. But pick the guys that you're going to want to watch. I've been playing it since I was in high school, and it has made me grow my love for the game. So I've drafted guys I'd love to watch. I draft the guys that I can watch on Monday nights and watch on Sunday, and I watch as much football as I can now, just because I love seeing these players grow and get better. And then obviously the picks that I make, and if they're great picks, I feel like I'm on top of the world. Otherwise, we won't talk about the ones that don't turn out. But again, just take the guys that are gonna make it more enjoyable for you to play fantasy football every year.
All right, that sounds great. Aaron, how about you?
Oh man. Yeah, just remember it's fun. Don't go on social media and badmouth the players just because you had a bad week. They're humans just like we are. We have bad weeks. We have bad drafts. We put the wrong guy in the lineup sometimes. So just remember that. But make sure you know your team's your league scoring system. What's valued. James and Chris have talked about bonus points for certain things. See if you can leverage that for your team. But get depth. Don't load up on quarterbacks and tight ends because you only got. I mean, depending on your league, maybe you have multiple tight ends or multiple flex spots. But unless you're flexing, a tight end or something, which I had to do last year and other people had to do. Um, you know, get those running backs, get those wide receivers, get depth, know your league, practice, practice, practice. And going back to something James said, team construction. If you have a first round player that's an injury concern, like let's say you end up with McCaffrey, make sure you don't draft a bunch of other injury concerned players and have some depth. So if McCaffrey misses a week, because he might have somebody that you can plug in. Maybe they're sitting in your flex and now they become your starter. And don't forget about bye weeks. I know it's really a minute point. When I'm drafting, it's not the decision, but if I'm toss up between two players and I've already drafted two running backs that are week 6 buys, I'm not going to draft another week 6 buy if it's the flip a coin point of deciding between two players. So just all those things to think about.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. A lot of great points there. James, wrap this up for us.
Yeah, and if you have kicker and defense in your league still, if you have both of those, definitely pay attention to the bye weeks. Do not draft a kicker and a defense with the same bye week or from the same team because you're going to be handicapped that week with two roster spots that are worthless.
Great point.
Yeah, and if you have individual defensive players, yeah, I'm in like 2 leagues now that have individual defensive players, and just try to make sure you don't want to have to. If you play 3, you don't want to have to carry 6 one week because you got a bunch of guys on buys. So make sure that the bye weeks are spread out among those players.
I
All
would
right.
also
Well,
add to, like, if you do play in a league that you have defense and kickers, and the platform allows you, and you don't want to draft a kicker early, just don't draft one. Wait
Mhm.
until week 1, right before week 1, and pick one up. Especially if you have an IR spot or anything like that, you might have someone get hurt. Use your IR spot, then pick up your kicker.
Hey,
all
Matt, can
right.
I make a plea to commissioners out there that might be watching this?
Yeah, that by all means.
Make sure you have an IR spot in your league because we got players getting injured
At
before the
least
season
one.
even starts. Yeah, have at least one. Like,
Least one.
I'd say 3.
Genty being out or other players getting injured. I mean, if you just drafted like we just drafted just a couple days ago, and now people that drafted Genty are freaking out, make sure you have at least one IR
I'm
spot.
one of those guys right now.
Yeah. So you can put that and you can maybe pick up Mike Williams, the running back, right? Is it Mike? Sorry, Mike
Mhm.
Washington. I'm
Mike
sorry, Mike
Mike
Washington,
Washington,
Washington.
the running back that they drafted this year, so that there's at least that flexibility or some other person that's on waivers. That's my plea
Uh,
to commissioners.
Great piece of advice. It just seems like it's a necessity of any league, at
Yeah.
least one, if not 2 spots.
It's a violent sport.
And consider Fab too.
Mhm.
Fab system's the best system to go with for free agents. And be the only person that decides if a trade gets vetoed too. I know that puts a lot of weight on the commissioner, but like just having trades be vetoed is one of the dumbest things unless there's obvious collusion. You never know what's going to happen.
Yep. We talked about that a couple weeks ago on the off-season show that you don't really know the impact of that trade down the line, judging it in week 1, and then in week 10, one of those guys is actually a star, and you thought it was a bad deal. So, yeah, I don't like vetoing trades, even as a commissioner. I don't want to veto unless there's something obvious going on that a team is dumping their roster to a friend or something.
Makes a lot of sense. Well,
Commissioner
James, Chris, thanks for joining again as usual. This is getting to be a great regular routine for us. Aaron, thank you for joining the show this year. I hope you've had fun.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, folks, it's again Aaron Lafferty, Fantasy Plus. You can check the show out at Wood TV 8 on their streaming app. I highly recommend you do. I've checked out a couple myself. They do some deep dives into fantasy football that will take you even further than what we did today. And folks, of course, thank you for tuning in. Again, tell your friends and family about the show, whether it's Detroit Lions content or this fantasy football episode. You can find us on social media as well as all streaming platforms. Love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Please leave those for us. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Until next time, stay gritty, my friends.